Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Rain fell in thin curtains on the skyscrapers of New York, illuminated by the neon lights of billboards that reflected multicolored glare onto the wet sidewalks. In this city where fortunes soared to dizzying heights, and where the downtrodden struggled to survive on every street corner, an event was about to shatter the destinies of two opposing worlds. On Fifth Avenue, at the corner of a luxury boutique where windows glittered with priceless jewelry and handbags, a black limousine waited, its tinted windows sheltering one of the richest and most influential women in the country, Victoria Holloway, billionaire heiress to a global fashion empire. Her elegant figure and determined gaze betrayed her confidence, but that evening, something unforeseen would shatter her world of certainties. A few meters away, a black boy of about 12, with torn clothes and sharp, intelligent eyes, stood on the sidewalk. Life on the streets had made him cautious, but he had developed an incredible instinct for sensing danger. His name was Elijah Carter. For years, he had survived alone, facing the cruelty of the world with courage and audacity. Suddenly, he spotted Victoria Holloway, standing up to grab a bottle from a stall selling artisanal fruit juices, a drink that, to most people, seemed like nothing more than a simple treat. But Elijah, his eyes wide, shouted through the crowd. "Don't drink that!" Her cry pierced the air, drawing all eyes, and a stunned silence fell over the street. Victoria, surprised and irritated, frowned. Who was this child who dared interrupt her? But when she met the boy's intense and desperate gaze, a shiver ran down her spine. She did not yet know that this cry would reveal an invisible danger, a threat to her life, a truth that none of her wealth, power, or influence could erase. Elijah, panting, his hands trembling, repeated, "You have to listen to me. If you drink this, you won't recover." At that moment, the street became a silent stage where the destinies of the billionaire and the street urchin intersected for the first time. And in this unexpected encounter, the story of Elijah and Victoria would unfold, a story of mystery, courage, and revelations that surpassed anything they could have imagined. The rain was falling even harder when Victoria Holloway took a step back, startled by the child's piercing cry. Her handbag slipped slightly from her shoulder, and she turned her head to look for the source of the unexpected interruption. Elijah Carter stood there, his feet soaked, his tattered coat clinging to his thin skin, but his eyes shone with a determination that nothing could extinguish. "I beg you," he cried, his voice trembling but firm. "Don't drink that." The crowd around them murmured, intrigued. Some thought he was a troubled kid, others smiled, amused by the scene. But Victoria felt a shiver run down her spine. She wasn't one to be easily impressed, but something in this boy's eyes intrigued her. "Listen, kid," she began, her voice icy but polite, "I don't know your problem, but you need to get away." Elijah took a step forward, his fists clenched. "No. You don't understand. This juice, it's not what it seems. You could die." Victoria frowned. She didn't like being disobeyed, especially not by a street child. Yet, the urgency in the boy's voice made her hesitate. She approached, curious despite herself, and observed the bottle that the juice stand was displaying. Nothing seemed abnormal, a bright green juice, with pieces of fruit, decorated like an organic and healthy product. "Explain yourself, immediately," she said, firmer than ever. Elijah swallowed hard, his lips trembling. They put something in it. Not to kill you right away, but it's going to change your life forever, for the worse." Victoria felt a strange tension rising within her. She had experienced extreme situations, negotiations with rival CEOs, media scandals, attacks on her empire. But never before had anyone shouted at her in the street to warn her of imminent danger. For the first time in a long time, she felt vulnerable. "Who did this? Who dared?" she began, but Elijah shook his head. I can't say it here. Too many people are listening. You have to follow me, now." Victoria hesitated. Logic dictated not to follow a stranger in the rain and the night. But instinct, that sixth sense that few people possess, whispered to her that she had no choice. She took a deep breath, smoothed her hair back into place, and said, in an authoritative but intrigued tone, "Very well. Show me. But if this is a joke." Elijah nodded, relieved to see that she believed him after all, and he started running, guiding her through the narrow, dark alleyways, away from prying eyes, away from the lights. What neither of them knew was that this decision would plunge them into a world of mystery and danger, where Victoria's wealth and Elijah's survival would be linked in ways they could never have imagined. Elijah guided Victoria through a maze of dark alleyways that even Manhattanites avoided after sunset. The sparse light from the street lamps cast ominous shadows on the crumbling walls, and the constant sound of rain on the cobblestones added an almost palpable tension. Victoria, despite her elegance and poise, felt her heart beating faster. She had never followed a child into such a sordid place, and yet, something in her instinct screamed that she had to continue. "You have to trust me," said Elijah, his eyes wide with urgency. "And why should I trust a street kid?" replied Victoria, in a dry but curious tone. Elijah stopped suddenly in front of a metal door, rusty and partially hidden by torn posters. He glanced quickly behind him, then murmured, "In there. That's where I can show it to you." Victoria looked around, no passers-by, no cameras in sight, just rain and darkness. She took a deep breath and followed the boy inside. The sound of rain faded into a distant echo in a narrow, damp corridor. Elijah stopped in front of an old wooden chest and pulled a small flashlight from his torn bag. He switched it on, and the light revealed a strange vial resting on top of the chest. "That's it," he said in a trembling voice. "What is this?" asked Victoria, leaning over to examine the vial. The substance inside was a dark, almost ominous green. "What they put in the juice you were about to drink is an experimental compound. They give it to the rich too." Elijah swallowed hard. "Why?" pressed Victoria, feeling panic rising. "To control them, to weaken them, to make them vulnerable to decisions they would never have made otherwise." Victoria took a step back. Her mind, trained to analyze risks and anticipate dangers, began to connect the pieces. An attack on her? In a glass of fruit juice? It seemed crazy, but Elijah spoke with such conviction that doubt didn't even cross her mind. How do you know that?" she asked, her voice a little trembling. "Because I saw what they did to others. And I couldn't just stand there and watch without warning as the next target emerged. You were the next one." Victoria felt her stomach clench. Her life, built on security, power, and control, was suddenly vulnerable to a world she had never imagined, a world of manipulation, treachery, and invisible dangers. "Very well, Elijah," she said, regaining her composure. "You've convinced me. Now, what do we do?" The boy gave a slight smile. "We must prevent them from putting this in your environment, before it's too late." And so, in that damp, dark alley, began their unlikely alliance, the billionaire and the homeless boy, united by fear, courage, and a mission that would change their destiny forever. Victoria and Elijah emerged from the alley, soaked but determined. The driving rain seemed intent on washing away their tracks, and that was exactly what they needed. Each step brought them closer to the juice stand where Victoria had almost drunk the contaminated beverage, but the atmosphere was now thick with suspicion and danger. "I need to know who's doing this," Victoria murmured, clutching the handbag to her. "It's not easy," Elijah replied. "They hide behind legitimate companies, contracts, fake documents, but I have an idea." They arrived in an adjacent alley, where Elijah took out a small, worn, and almost illegible notebook. Inside, he had noted observations, times, names, and symbols that he had collected over weeks. "Do you see that name here?" he said, pointing to a line. "Drake Industries. They're behind the last batches of this organic juice. Victoria frowned. She knew Drake Industries, a discreet but influential company specializing in dietary supplements and health products. A respectable company on the surface, but Elijah had just revealed another side to her, that of manipulation and control. "How can you be so sure?" she asked, her voice a mixture of worry and determination. "Because I followed the deliveries. I saw the crates go by, and I saw who was preparing them. They leave no trace, except for those who know how to look." Victoria took a deep breath. Her first reaction would have been to contact security or the police, but Elijah made her think differently. The authorities might be complicit, or worse, too slow. She had to act quickly. "Very well," she said, her gaze fixed on the notebook. "We must infiltrate what they call their laboratory." "Exactly," replied Elijah, a mixture of pride and fear in his voice. They moved cautiously through the narrow, silent streets, each step deliberate like a military strategy. Victoria was beginning to understand that the boy, despite his young age and life on the streets, had developed survival and analytical instincts far superior to those of many adults. Suddenly, a noise behind them startled Victoria. Two masked figures were approaching, silent and menacing. "This way," shouted Elijah, pulling Victoria into a side alley. They hid behind garbage cans, their hearts pounding. Victoria realized that it wasn't just a contaminated drink. Someone wanted to prevent her from discovering the truth, and perhaps even kill her if necessary. "They saw us," Elijah murmured. "Then we have no more time to lose," Victoria replied, her voice cold but determined. "If we want to survive and expose Drake Industries, we must act now." And so their race against time began, a street kid and a billionaire, against a conspiracy that extended further than they could have imagined. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but a thick fog enveloped Manhattan. Victoria, still shaken by the events of the previous day, had decided to put aside her billionaire status and concentrate entirely on the mission that Elijah had just entrusted to her. "I never thought my life would take this turn," Victoria murmured, looking at the boy's notebook. "Me neither," Elijah replied, his voice grave. "But if we don't act now, Drake Industries will continue to infect more people, and you might not be the last target." They approached one of Drake Industries' buildings, a modern structure with a sterile design. From the outside, it seemed unremarkable: offices, employees in suits, and cameras everywhere. But Elijah knew exactly where to strike. "The main entrance is too heavily guarded," he murmured. "We have to go through the back, where the deliveries arrive." Victoria nodded. Her experience in the business world had taught her to quickly observe and analyze situations. Every detail mattered. Together, they moved silently towards the delivery area, avoiding the guards and security cameras. At the rear of the building, a small metal gate awaited them. Elijah pulled out a makeshift hook and, after a few tense seconds, the latch gave way. They entered a dimly lit corridor, where a metallic, chemical smell hung in the air. "It's here," Elijah whispered. "They store the substances here before mixing them into the juices." Victoria looked around. Crates labeled "organic product" concealed disturbing substances, and she realized just how sophisticated this scheme was. Drake Industries wasn't just a respectable company on the surface, it was a network of manipulation and control. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind them. They quickly hid behind the crates. A figure in a white jumpsuit entered the room, carrying a tray filled with green vials identical to the one Elijah had shown them the day before. "Everything must be ready for today's expedition," murmured the stranger. "No mistakes this time." Victoria felt an icy chill. She understood that every second counted. They couldn't just observe, they had to act to prevent contamination. "We must find the leader," she whispered to Elijah. "Yes, and quickly," he replied, his eyes fixed on the vials. They knew the next step would be the most dangerous: infiltrating the heart of Drake Industries, where the plot was being hatched, and uncovering the identities of those manipulating them. Every step risked being fatal, but neither Victoria nor Elijah was prepared to back down. And in that oppressive silence, the tension mounted, suggesting that the truth they were about to discover would be far more terrifying than they had imagined. Victoria and Elijah advanced cautiously into the heart of the Drake Industries building. Every step was calculated, every sound amplified by the heavy silence of the corridors. The green vials, stored in crates, seemed to watch them from the shadows, like a silent warning. "We need to find a computer or documents, anything that can prove what they're doing," Victoria whispered. "Follow me," replied Elijah, his gaze scanning every corner. They emerged onto a secure door, protected by a keypad. Elijah took out a small notebook and showed Victoria some scribbled notes, codes he had previously observed on deliveries and access points. "If I remember correctly. 4-7-2-9-6, he said, entering the code. The door opened with a metallic creak. Inside was a small office, littered with files and lit computers. Scattered documents revealed the truth, test reports on substances, lists of targeted wealthy clients, and above all, plans to contaminate the juices distributed en masse. Victoria felt a cold anger rising within her. Her entire world of luxury, security, and power had just been threatened by an organization that hid behind impeccable appearances. "We have what we need," she murmured. "Not yet," replied Elijah, frowning. "We have to get out of here before they find us." But before they could act, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Two men in suits appeared, clearly looking for something, or someone. Victoria felt her heart race. She knew the escape techniques, but Elijah, despite his young age, seemed to have anticipated this situation. "This way," he whispered, pulling Victoria behind a metal piece of furniture. They held their breath as the men passed inches away. Their low, menacing voices spoke of deliveries and control, confirming that the danger was real and organized. "They are serious, and they know we are here," Victoria murmured, her eyes shining with determination. "Yes, but we have what we need to stop them." Carefully, they left the office, carrying a few files and a hard drive containing all the evidence. Their escape through the building turned into a race against time, each step bringing them closer to danger but also to the truth. "We need to alert someone who can protect us and take action," Victoria said, panting. "I know exactly who, but it won't be easy," replied Elijah, his gaze determined. As they vanished into the shadows, their first confrontation with Drake Industries revealed that their mission would be far more dangerous than anticipated. But the unlikely alliance between the billionaire and the homeless boy had just taken flight, and nothing could stop them in their quest for justice. Victoria and Elijah had managed to escape the Drake Industries building with the evidence in hand. The rain had long since stopped, leaving behind a damp and silent city. Every footstep echoed in the empty streets, but Victoria knew that the danger wasn't behind them, it was following them, invisible but imminent. "We need to find someone trustworthy," said Victoria, consulting the hard drive. "Someone who can act quickly, and who won't be corrupted," replied Elijah, his expression serious. Victoria thought of her personal lawyer and a few hand-picked members of her security team. But she knew the threat was greater than she had imagined. Drake Industries' accomplices could be hiding anywhere, infiltrated within the government, corporations, and even law enforcement. As they walked, Elijah stopped in front of a small, modest but welcoming neighborhood cafe. "Here," he murmured. "They know people who help those the system ignores." Inside, the smell of freshly ground coffee and pastries warmed the atmosphere. A man in his 40s, with a face weathered by the sun and experience, greeted them. "Elijah," he said, a grateful smile on his face. "You've come back." "Yes, and I need your help," replied the boy, placing the hard drive on the table. The man studied the documents and Victoria's tense expression. He immediately understood the gravity of the situation. "Drake Industries," he murmured, frowning. "They've crossed another line. If what you're saying is true, everyone could be in danger." Victoria quickly introduced herself and explained everything: the juice stand, the vial, the invisible threats. The man nodded, impressed by the accuracy of the information and the boy's courage. "We need a plan," he finally said. "Not just to reveal what they're doing, but to protect those who might be targeted." Elijah and Victoria exchanged a glance. For the first time since the beginning of this story, they were no longer alone. Allies, however modest and unexpected, had just entered their battle. "Okay," said Victoria, her voice firm. Then let's begin. Show us what we need to do. The man produced a map of the city, marked with strategic points and locations where the contaminated products were being distributed. He explained how they could neutralize the deliveries and expose the operation to the public, all while remaining out of reach of Drake Industries' accomplices. That evening, in that small neighborhood cafe, an unlikely alliance was formed: a homeless boy with incredible courage, a billionaire used to control, and a discreet network of vigilantes ready to confront an invisible but dangerous enemy. And in the silence of the New York night, they all understood a simple but terrifying truth: the battle for justice had just begun. Victoria, Elijah, and their new allies had spent the night meticulously planning to infiltrate Drake Industries' network and prevent the distribution of the contaminated juice. Every detail was considered: delivery schedules, surveillance cameras, and employee routes. Day broke over Manhattan, and the city's apparent calm masked the growing tension. Victoria, dressed in a simple yet practical outfit, followed Elijah through the alleyways, their hearts beating as one. The mission they were about to undertake was risky. If they were spotted, everything could collapse in an instant. "Ready?" Elijah murmured, his eyes shining with anticipation. "More than ever," replied Victoria, tightening her gloves. They approached a warehouse where several crates of juice were to be shipped. Elijah led Victoria through a narrow passage that only those familiar with the place could use. Inside, the noise of machines and busy employees filled the air. "Over there," Elijah murmured, pointing to a control room with screens showing all the warehouse cameras. Victoria watched intently. She understood that if this room remained active, they would never escape unharmed. With the help of the man from the cafe, Elijah discreetly deactivated the surveillance systems while Victoria collected the evidence and marked the contaminated crates to neutralize them. But just when they thought they had everything under control, an alarm suddenly sounded. "They saw us," shouted Elijah, pulling Victoria behind a row of crates. Men in white suits rushed towards them, armed with lamps and radios. The tension rose instantly. Failure was not an option. Victoria felt the adrenaline surge, every muscle ready to react. "We have to get out through the roof," she shouted to Elijah. They raced up a service staircase, while the employees ran after them. The rain, which had started again outside, offered little cover for their escape. Once on the roof, Victoria and Elijah froze for a moment, staring down at the void and the dizzying height. "Take my hand," said Victoria, her voice firm but reassuring. "I'm with you," replied Elijah. They climbed over the roof to reach an adjacent building, their hearts pounding. Behind them, Drake Industries' accomplices were furious, but they had bought themselves some time and secured the crucial evidence. Breathless but alive, they paused for a moment on the roof, gazing at the city stretching out below them. Victoria realized that despite wealth and power, she had found something more precious: the confidence, courage, and ingenuity of a homeless boy who had just changed her life forever. "We're not out of the woods yet," she said, her voice deep. "No, but we have started to win," replied Elijah, his gaze fixed on the horizon. And in the gray skies of Manhattan, they understood that the battle against Drake Industries was only just beginning, but that from now on, they were ready to face whatever came their way. After their dramatic escape from the warehouse, Victoria and Elijah made their way to a safe location with their allies from the coffee shop. The recovered hard drive and files were intact, containing all the evidence needed to expose Drake Industries. "We have everything we need," said Victoria, placing the hard drive on the table. "Now we need the world to know." Elijah nodded, but his face was worried. "The media, they can be corrupt," he murmured. "And Drake Industries has a lot of contacts." Victoria smiled with determination. Her wealth and influence could work in their favor this time. She knew exactly how to deliver a message that would be impossible to ignore. "Then we'll use their own tools against them," she declared. "I know reliable journalists. We'll release this evidence on all platforms." They spent the day contacting journalists, lawyers, and independent broadcasters. Every piece of the puzzle was carefully prepared to prove the manipulation and contamination of the products. Elijah, despite his young age, watched in awe as Victoria transformed her fear into strategy and action. As night fell, the news broke: local and national media outlets picked up Drake Industries' evidence. Images of the green vials, internal documents, and reports of prohibited experiments circulated across all platforms. The scandal erupted immediately. "It's incredible," Elijah murmured, seeing notifications and shares explode on the screens. But the victory was short-lived. Drake Industries' reaction was swift. Company representatives sent threatening messages to Victoria, and some accomplices even tried to find Elijah to intimidate him. "They're not going to give up easily," said Victoria, checking her messages. "We knew it would happen," replied Elijah, his voice deep. Victoria placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "But look what we have accomplished. You have saved lives, Elijah, and we have exposed the truth. Nothing they do now can erase that." The boy smiled shyly, feeling for the first time in a long time that he had found someone who believed him and protected him. However, despite their apparent success, a sense of urgency persisted. Drake Industries was powerful, cunning, and willing to do anything to regain control. And Victoria and Elijah knew that the final battle was yet to come. A few days after the evidence was made public, Victoria and Elijah began to feel the pressure from Drake Industries. Anonymous messages, threatening calls, and attempts to break into their safe houses showed that the company wasn't going to give up so easily. "They want to intimidate us," said Victoria, checking the security cameras at her residence. "Or worse, they want to make us disappear," Elijah murmured, his face grave. Victoria then realized that their media victory was only the first step. To protect their lives and the lives of innocent people, they had to neutralize the threat directly. With the help of their allies at the coffee shop, they devised a daring plan: infiltrate Drake Industries headquarters and expose those responsible, while securing the hazardous substances. As night fell, Victoria and Elijah, equipped with discreet clothing and protective gear, approached the central building. Each step echoed in the night like a countdown to danger. "This time, we must be quick and precise," Victoria whispered. "I am ready," replied Elijah, his heart pounding but determined. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Security systems were reinforced, and guards patrolled the corridors. But Victoria and Elijah, thanks to their knowledge of the place and their preparation, managed to advance undetected. They finally reached the main office, where Dominic Drake, the CEO, was surrounded by piles of documents and screens. His face twisted in anger when he saw them. "How dare you," he growled. "We dared, because you are playing with people's lives," Victoria shouted, brandishing the hard drive containing all the evidence. Dominic tried to grab the hard drive, but Elijah, quick and courageous, held him back and pushed him away. An intense confrontation ensued. Victoria and Elijah faced a powerful man, but their courage and determination overcame his rage. "It's over, Drake," Victoria shouted. "Everyone will know what you've done. And you'll be held responsible." Dominic, seeing that he was powerless against the unlikely alliance between the billionaire and the street kid, realized he had lost. The evidence was irrefutable, and this time, no legal or corrupt means could save his empire. Elijah, breathless but proud, watched Victoria. For him, this victory was not just against Drake Industries, but against a world that too often ignores the voices of the weakest. "We did it," he murmured, a shy smile on his face. "Yes, and now we can finally breathe," replied Victoria, her eyes shining with emotion. But despite this victory, they knew the road to safety and full justice would still be long. Drake Industries might fall, but other dangers could arise. A few weeks had passed since the confrontation with Dominic Drake. Drake Industries was now under investigation, and those responsible for the conspiracy had been arrested thanks to the irrefutable evidence provided by Victoria and Elijah. The city, still vibrant with its neon lights and skyscrapers, seemed to breathe a little more freely. Victoria sat in her light-filled office, gazing out the window at the city. She had regained control of her empire, but something had changed within her. The fear and vulnerability she had felt in the face of Drake Industries had made her more human, more aware of the importance of courage and empathy. Elijah entered, a wide smile on his face, holding a small box containing some souvenirs of their adventure, the notebook where he had recorded his observations, an empty vial of the contaminated substance, and a small badge from the cafe where they had found their allies. "Look what we have accomplished," he said proudly. "Yes, and you were incredible, Elijah," Victoria replied, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Without you, none of this would have been possible." For the first time in years, the homeless boy felt he had found a family and a mentor in Victoria. The billionaire, for her part, had discovered an essential truth: wealth and power mean nothing if one ignores the courage and sincerity of others. Their unlikely alliance had changed not only their own destiny, but also that of many others who could have fallen victim to the conspiracy. The public scandal had forced Drake Industries to disappear, and the media continued to tell the story of these two unexpected heroes. "What are we going to do now?" asked Elijah, his voice full of curiosity. "We will rebuild, help those in need," Victoria replied, her voice soft but determined. "And we will ensure that no one ever suffers what we have discovered." They left the office together, walking through the neon-lit streets under a finally clear sky. Victoria, for the first time, felt she could allow herself to simply be human. Elijah, for his part, felt his life had just changed forever. He was no longer just a street kid, but a recognized and respected hero. As they walked away, hand in hand, in this city that had been the scene of their struggle, one certainty dawned on both of them: no matter the wealth, the power, or the dangers to come, courage, honesty, and solidarity were the true weapons that could change the world. And in the peaceful silence of the night, New York seemed to hold its breath, witnessing the unexpected victory of a billionaire and a homeless black boy who had dared to defy the impossible.